Hello, hello. Welcome to the second episode of the Peel Good podcast, bringing you all the juicy marketing of yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Brought to you by skilled experts coming together to give you all their knowledge on the latest marketing trends. I'm Emily Knowles, the account coordinator for Clementine Creative Agency, an Atlanta-based agency that gives you creative and marketing services for different clients in different industries. Thank you so much to everyone who listened to the first episode. We got positive feedback, great compliments, and we're really looking forward to this episode now because of it. So if you didn't see that first episode, you can still view it on our YouTube channel, Clementine Creative Agency, or you can listen to it on the Apple Podcast app, the Spotify app, or the Google Podcast app. So returning from the first time is me, but I'm here with a new co-host, our web developer, Brad.
Hi, I'm Brad Mance, and I am the web developer for Clementine Creative Agency. I've been a web developer for 7+ years, and I'm basically the guy behind the scenes that has come out to light.
That's right. We finally brought him in front of the camera instead of behind it, and now he's excited.
Against my will, please help me.
So, because you are our web developer, you kind of brought a topic to the table that's important for many brands to take account of and important for a lot of people out there as users.
That's right. The topic I want to bring up is web accessibility. And the reason why I want to bring it up is because recently I've noticed a lot of elderly people, for example, my grandparents and those in my community, they're having difficulty nowadays just navigating with websites. And I feel like this is a topic that's being overlooked now on most websites being developed, with them being flamboyant and being high design and not really taking that into account for that particular audience.
Right. And that's a great topic to bring to the table because we want to make sure that that websites are all inclusive for all people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the first question we should even ask is, what is web accessibility?
Well, web accessibility is basically the practice to make sure that there are no barriers to prevent any and all parties from accessing or interacting with the web in any way possible.
Right. And when we say all parties, what exactly are we speaking on?
Well, all parties include also people with impairments, and whether it's temporary or permanent or just basically a certain situational whatsoever.
Right. So it could be someone who has someone with a disability that may be hearing impaired or visually impaired, and they need to be able to still navigate a website without limitations.
Yes, it covers all of that. It includes all parties. Absolutely.
That's right. And then we can go even more to say it's not always about someone who may have a disability. It could be those who have situational limitations.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So if someone you say is on a train and they don't have their headphones with them, they still want to be able to watch a video online, but maybe it needs closed captioning. Absolutely. And someone overlooked that to where it doesn't, and now they can't listen to a video on the website.
Yeah, how annoying is that?
Yeah, well, for me, on a personal note, I go to a lot of concerts, so I know if I stand too close to an amp or a stereo or something, and the next day I just cannot hear, but I'm on a website and I need to be able to listen to audio, it'd be a lot easier for me to have closed captions.
Absolutely, it would.
Yeah.
And also be good for those who basically he cannot even hear the video whatsoever. So subtitles can help as well. So.
Right. And then we can even start to think about those who may live in more rural areas. So maybe their speed connection isn't done as well as someone who lives in maybe the city or someone who has better access to higher speed internet. And so if maybe those images are loading slower for them on a website, they still need to be able to know what that image is. And maybe some text can replace what that image is.
Absolutely, yes.
We can start to think, well, how are brands and how are companies going to be able to benefit from this? Or not even benefit from this, but should be able to take steps to make sure that their website is more accessible?
Yes, absolutely. There are certain steps we can take to actually, for them to actually make their websites more accessible.
Right. But first, let's say, if you are a brand or a company and you have a website that you feel needs to be more web accessible, the reason you would want to even do this is because it creates a wider audience and it has a greater pool of potential for customers. So if you kind of look at your website and you feel as though it's limited in its accessibility, you're kind of cutting out a pool of people who can be easily using and navigating your site. So you don't want to limit yourself in any way that could potentially pull people away from the site. So, and that being said, you always want to have a brand be able to cater to a subset of people. So, for example, when I was doing research, the Pew Center for Research was saying that 12.6% of the population has some form of disability. And so when we even take the range of that and don't even speak on those, or only speak on those with disabilities, you have people who have situational limitations, as we were speaking about, or maybe in an area that doesn't have high-speed internet. you still want your website to cater to those people. And as a brand and company, you don't want to cut those pool of people away.
Definitely. Not to mention, also, it just makes them feel more interactive with it and eventually want to do more business. So it just makes them feel more comfortable. So if I've seen a lot of elderly people, and they've had difficulty just actually navigate their site whatsoever, and that can really turn them away from that, and that's not good for any marketing standpoint whatsoever.
Because you might have someone who didn't grow up in the digital age, and so it's kind of just been pushed on them as we've grown and grown with digital, and so now they're having to come to these websites to gain information or to be able to navigate for whatever they may need. And it needs to be accessible to them.
Yes, absolutely. I've seen a lot of elderly people just have difficulty just being able to fill out a form whatsoever, just because they don't know what to do whatsoever. So.
And so for a brand, you definitely want to make sure that you're catering to these type of people. And making it, once again, as we've said, all inclusive, so that barriers are not a problem.
Absolutely, yes. Because you never know what your audience may be. And if you cater to all audiences, not only will your business grow, but it will also just make good on your reputation as well. So that way you show you're good for all parties. So.
Right. And so we can always say that for a brand's benefit, you're getting this greater pool of people, exposing your brand more, you're allowing yourself to be able to increase your web traffic if necessary. And then I've also read in my own research that it helps with SEO improvements.
Oh yes, SEO, or search engine optimization, is basically just trying to improve search getting traffic into your site. Basically, both quality and quantity on it through search engine results. Yeah, and to be honest, really, search engine optimization and web accessibility are actually related together, really, because they both have the same goal, which is trying to present relative content to the users. And in order to do that, they try to follow the same principles, such as formatting and semantics. So if a website is poorly on that end, they won't really yield the best results. So actually, when you're doing search engine optimization, ironically, you're doing the same thing with web accessibility. So they're kind of tied hand in hand.
Hand in hand, right. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. And so in continuing the personal research I did on this topic, not being the web developer, I also came across a shocking statistic from ability.net saying that less than 10% of websites are actually web accessible. So what type of brands and industries should actually be making their websites more accessible or taking steps to make their website more accessible?
Well, at the top of my head, I would recommend that the governments and just highly regulated industries, they need to keep this in mind, really. But I really see it that all parties can benefit from this.
So government entities, public institutions, anyone who's highly regulated, those type of industries, they should be taking the steps necessary.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and so in speaking of the steps that are necessary, for us here at Clementine, we definitely take steps with our clients' websites to make sure they're more web accessible.
Yes.
And so there's smaller steps that can be taken to get to the bigger steps. So what are some kind of so to say, 5 key elements that could help a website be more accessible?
Well, number one, I would say, is make certain that all your images have alternative text in there, and or alt tags, really. And they need to be descriptive as possible. They need to describe the image, because we need to take into account, for say example, that person will actually go onto your website. They're not able to see the image, so they use assistive technology such as speech that basically turn that, and they tell them what the image is. So we need to consider that into the mix, really, for all our images. So that's one area.
So for instance, when we do talk about alt tags or alternative text, as seen in the screenshot here, we can show that once you scroll over each of the images displayed, it has a text box that pops up and kind of gives a description of what the image is.
Right. And you want to have descriptive text in your images, not just something that basically has the blog name on it. Because, as like you said, you need to cater towards those who cannot see the image, would say. They won't know what they're talking about. So they'll have basically speaking on there. As you can see right here on the far right, you can see that this particular image right here, it's very descriptive in telling what the image is. So that's what you really want to keep in mind when you do alternative text for your website.
Absolutely.
Another one is just formatting in general, really. So just having and your heading tags just being there. I've seen a lot of websites that don't have any heading 1 titles, really, or just using multiple ones, using like heading 2, heading 3, really. Such formatting and goes back to search engine optimization, because when when Google and other search engines are crawling to your site, they are trying to read the content, trying to get the main idea, and so That in turn kind of confuses it and gives poor results. Also, just for a web accessibility standpoint, really, we're talking about an audience really just being able to know exactly what the main topic is, what are the subtopics, and so forth. And if we keep throwing things all around, then the assistive technology won't know exactly how to go in a formatted way. So it's always good to have that in there, and always have an H1 tag in your site. Absolutely.
Right. So it's kind of like for someone who's a general user who's maybe written a paper before and they have like their title and then they have maybe a subtitle and then some copy text and body copy.
Absolutely.
It kind of looks like that from a page. You want to be able to plainly see what you're seeing without barriers.
Yes.
Right.
That's exactly.
And when the assistive tool kind of helps those who may need assisting, like they can read clearly exactly what it is on the page.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh. And we talk about proper formatting. We want to make sure that you have clear headings, clear titles, body copy that follows in line. So for instance, on this screenshot provided, you'll see that your bigger title and heading and then body copy to follow.
Yes, absolutely. So you can tell that is the main topic. So assistive technology will actually realize that is the main area. And underneath there is the projects too. That uses a secondary heading or heading 2 pretty much. So as you go down the page, it'll actually read out the content. Plus it's good for SEO as well because they know exactly what is the main area and what are the secondary and third area, which improves score, absolutely.
Right. It's just kind of just like writing a paper. Make sure you have your headline, your body copy, and any subheadings you might need.
Absolutely. It's formatting people.
Formatting.
Yes. Another one is just making sure that your website is more keyboard accessible a little bit. So, for example, like certain forms and whatnot, I've seen their fields basically have placeholders instead of just form labels in general. For example, like the name field will actually have name exactly within the field and not outside of it per se. That's kind of bad on SEO and web accessibility standpoint, really. At web accessibility standpoint is because assistive technology, they won't be able to read that per se, and it sometimes will disappear if you enter a value and it goes away. So it doesn't look good for that. So it's always best to put it outside of it.
Right.
So that's what I would recommend, absolutely. And I've seen a lot of elderly people just getting confused when they try to fill out their name and then it just goes away when they want to erase it, and they come to me and say, can you tell me what this field is again?
Right.
Absolutely. So it just makes things so much simpler for them and for those in general who use assistive technology to read through the page to know exactly what it is.
Exactly. Yeah. And not just the elderly. Honestly, that's helpful for me when I'm filling out a form and it's in the actual field that it's in and I space it back to type in my information, and then I'm like, what am I filling out again? So definitely having it above it will help someone even just like me.
Yes, so you hear it, so you heard it. It's not, web accessibility is good for everybody.
Right.
So absolutely.
That's where the all-inclusive for all people comes
Absolutely, in. Yes.
Well, in talking about keyboard navigation, you mentioned that you definitely want to have a clearly labeled contact form, or any form for that matter, that has the labels outside of the text box, as seen in this screenshot.
Yes, absolutely. Because again, it says you need to consider people who are unable to actually see the screen per se. So they're having it read out to you. And just having the actual indication of what the form label is inside of the form doesn't really help. As you can see right here, it's placed outside. So when assistive technology goes through it, it can read that out, let the user know exactly what that field is. Plus, it's just better for people all around, because I know some people, when they actually try to go into a field, they have to place the label in there and they just fill it out, and when they want to go back and delete everything, they don't know what it is. And they come to me saying, hey, do you know what this form label is? And so it's just so much better just to have it outside to indicate, really. I know it's a pain, everyone, really. It's a little extra space, but I'm telling you, it's worth it.
And by people coming to him for help, he means me.
And another one I want to recommend is basically just being more mobile friendly per se. And for example, what I say about mobile friendly is you want to make certain that people can interact with the website pretty well. For example, such as the buttons may be too small on certain sites. I have a lot of elderly people that don't actually have very good dexterity in their fingers, so it's kind of hard for them to actually hit things such as the mobile icon or buttons on a certain page.
Right.
So you want to make certain you cater for that, really. So.
Right. And so as we discussed how you go from a desktop to a mobile site, we talked about how that menu that stretched so wide across your screen on desktop came smaller into what we call a hamburger menu. it needs to explicitly say menu as seen in this screenshot.
Absolutely. So I know most mobile sites nowadays, they just have the hamburger icon or something similar to that, really. And it's no indication to what whatsoever. And I have people saying, and come to me saying, okay, I see this website, but how do I open up the menu on my phone? And so it just a better indication, really, just to have the menu, the name or word menu directly underneath the menu icon, indicate what it is. And not just that, but when you open up the menu as well, to indicate that it's closed too, as you can see towards the right, really. It's just a good indication, not only just for people who are unable to actually see the site and actually know exactly what it indicates, but also just for users in general, really, who are new to the web, really don't really know what it is. It's always a good indication to do that.
Right, and then on the screenshot as well, you can see a bigger button displayed for click here for those who may need it.
Oh, absolutely, because I've seen a lot of people with big fingers that are unable to hit small buttons. It's very frustrating.
Okay, and what about if you have a website that you log on to and it has an orange background, that's its color, and then the text on it is yellow? I feel like that is not helpful in any sense. One, because the colors just don't go well together, but two, it makes it hard to read.
No, that goes into my next one as well. Basically, you want to have a good high contrast background because it's not good for those who have are visually impaired, but and it's also bad for a user's point of view eyes. Like I would never put something like yellow and orange on there.
You wouldn't dare.
No, I would not dare, or anything of that nature, because I feel I understand, and the users that go to my site, and I want to make certain that they have the best experience whatsoever. Plus, it hurts my eyes, so I feel your pain absolutely.
Now, we gave some extreme cases of having your high contrast and low contrast text, such as orange and yellow text. But with this screenshot, this is a more realistic style choice that someone would make.
Absolutely. So you can see towards the left a little bit. You can see it's kind of hard to actually see the menu text really much because of the color choice right there. It's green on this blue background. That's kind of a bad thing because it's dark on dark. You don't want that per se. And you can also tell right there on the body copy as well. It's more like text on a white background. It's really hard for them to see, and it's bad for users, especially the elderly people who have bad eyesight and those who. Just for those with bad eyesight, it's just bad for them to actually see the site, really. And even it's bad for my eyes, really. So, as opposed to the right, really, you can see a good contrast, really. Light on dark, and then dark on light. So you can actually make things see much. You can actually see and read it much more easier. So you always want to keep that in mind, and especially when you're doing a website, it's really why it's important for web accessibility. Yes.
Right, because when you have such a bright screen background, like with the white, and your brightness is up on your laptop because you want to make sure that you're able to see the screen, you want to be able to see the menu and what you're actually navigating to without having to squint and really take it in the time to read what it is because the text is so light against a dark background or a light text on a light background.
Absolutely. I know I definitely would, really.
Well, that's very informative to know, especially for someone who is not on the back end, as you say, since we're pulling you forward to bring what your back end is always going through. Now I can learn from someone who is in the forefront. It's very knowledgeable for me too, and it will make me notice when I go on a website what's helpful and what isn't, from mobile to desktop.
Absolutely, yes.
Because we can kind of summarize and say, for the internet, it's definitely not perfect, but there are steps that we can take to fix some of its flaws, and that being that certain websites are not accessible to all people. So whenever we can take those steps to be more accessible and be all-inclusive, I think it's a better fit for all.
Yes, I
absolutely.
agree.
And we actually have a blog post on our website, ClementineCreativeAgency.com, that gives a little bit more insight and a little bit more of Brad's tips and tricks on how to make your website more accessible that you can now access.
All right, absolutely.
So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you.